If you're looking to enhance your texturing skills with Substance Designer and UE5, this video series is for you. I'll guide you through the process of creating a trim texture set, the one that is used to design this entire environment. With over 10 years of experience creating science fiction games like Destiny and Mass Effect, I'm sharing the techniques that I've been refining throughout the years. And now you can apply them to your own projects. This is the second video of the series where we continue the modeling process for our Sci-Fi panels. And then we're going to be starting our trim texture set in Substance Designer. After that, we'll review the game-ready 3D assets that were made from the trim texture. Then I'll give a detailed overview of how to make a material with its variants in UE5. And then finally, I'll walk you through the scene that showcases all of our work. Let's create this tileable metal detail at the bottom. For this, we're going to be using subdivisions. Let's start off by creating a rectangle over the bottom trim, and then moving it into position. For the height, I'm going to give it 5. The reference plane on the bottom has been really useful, as you can see. We've been using it for every trim. It helps us stay on the grid and keep everything on the proper size. We're going to start off by creating a cylinder that's going to help us shape the container where we're going to be adding all of the details. I want to center it on this rectangle, so I'm going to add a cut in the middle. And this is going to create a vertex that we can use as a guide. So moving the cylinder into place, we're going to scale it down. I want it to be within this container. And I'm going to be using the grid to move it towards the left. This detail is going to be tileable, but I'm going to be modeling most of the features in the center and then deal with the tiling at the end. Because it is subdivisions, I'm going to go with a modest amount of sides and segments. The height segments, I'm going to lower to 1, and then move it up into place. We need to convert it into an editable poly so we can delete the left half. When working with subdivisions, we need to introduce loops and edges to maintain detail. For that reason, I want to delete the areas that we do not need. Let's delete the bottom half and extrude the edge. This way we don't worry about the bottom and how it's subdividing. Let's extrude these 2 polygons all the way to the edge. Let's add a cut that goes all the way through the middle, and this way we can extrude additional detail. With these faces selected, I'm dragging them to the left to extrude them. But I'm stopping along the way to create supporting detail. As you see, we actually have multiple extrusions. I'm gonna grab these vertices and move them down to create an angle. And then I'm gonna grab them along with the ones at the bottom and scale them on the y-axis to create a different angle. Let's cut this rectangle in half. And then move that on the grid. And then create an additional edge. Now we can grab these polygons on the left and move them down towards the center of this detail. This is going to help us with tiling later on. Let's add some supporting edges to these 2. In a situation like this, the minimum amount of edges that you need is 3. The one on the center and then another one on each side. The tighter that these are, the sharper the detail is going to be after you apply the Turbo Smooth. And that is something I'm thinking about when I'm adding the details. In this case, I want them to be tighter, so I'm gonna grab the vertices and then scale them down. We're getting close to the point where we apply a turbo smooth so we can turn it on and off and see what's going on. I want this part of the detail to have a rectangular extrusion that goes in, so I'm gonna add additional edges. And now we can select the polygons in the center and extrude them down, holding the shift key and then moving them on the Z-axis. I'm stopping along the way in order to create supporting edges. In order to shape the details on the center, we're gonna use the inset tool. We're gonna do that a couple of times in order to create definition as we go. Moving them down, I'm creating an angle that looks like a bevel, and then using the inset tool again in order to add the supporting edges that we need for subdivision. Now I'm gonna be using the connect tool on different parts of our model to create additional loops. After adding these lines, I'm going to introduce a turbo smooth. This way we can start seeing our results. There's some issue going on in the perimeter of the model. That's because these edges are not quads. So let's add a connection and make sure everything is welded. The turbo smooth is revealing an issue at the bottom of this model. And it's because we have extra polygons that we do not need. Once we delete them, the issue is going to go away. Now what we see is that many supporting edges are missing. The model is very soft and we need it to be well defined. It needs to look like a metal piece that is chiseled and has sharp angles. Let's delete the polygons on the left as well. When they get deleted, you'll see that the geometry will end very sharply. Our extruded part needs more definition on the sides, so I'm going to be using the connect tool on that area and also at the bottom, adding 2 loops on each section. And I'm doing this while looking at the turbo smooth so I can see the tightness that I need on these connections. This area also needs definition, so let's add a few loops. You can see that the part is starting to take shape. I want to create additional space behind this extruded detail, so I'm going to detach this portion of the model, move it towards the right, and then bridge the gap. And we can introduce additional loops on this new gap very easily. Now I'm thinking about a circular detail that looks like it was drilled all the way around. So let's grab some of the top faces and extrude them down. I'm going to convert this edge selection into faces and then keep what I need. Holding shift, I'm moving them down while snapping on the nearest edge. This new detail is going to need supporting edges as well. These supporting edges are on the center of the detail, but also on the side walls. When working with these tight spaces, I also do not want to add too many loops. What could happen is that the detail becomes overly sharp and the normals are not going to have that round edge to catch the light. Let's Control-Shift drag the center part to the left to create a duplicate. Because of muscle memory, I keep using the old shortcut. For this duplicated feature, we do not need the extrusion in the center, so we're just gonna select it all and delete it and then bridge the gap. The idea is that the center detail is gonna be multiplied over and over again, but it's gonna be at an angle to catch the light and the normals in a very interesting way. To seal the gap, we grab the top edge and extrude it down while stopping at each vertex. This way we keep everything as quads. And then we go to the vertex mode to make sure that everything is welded. Let's add a supporting edge to the right side of this model. I'm gonna be testing the angle to see if it's working. So let's rotate it to see how it looks on the top view. I'm thinking that it's a little too thick, so I'm gonna move the vertices from the bottom and lower the thickness. And now I'm gonna retest the angle using the top view. I like the definition, the sharpness. I think it's gonna work. So now we need to get it into place and scale it into position. So let's detach it so we can easily duplicate it horizontally throughout the model. I'm trying to determine the distances between one part and the other. Let's add 30. Oh, I always overcompensate with these. But yet, it's easier to delete them than to add them again. I made them instances just in case I wanted to modify one so I can see the results on the others. As you saw, I added a turbo smooth to one of the parts and all of them got updated. Let's delete the center area to make room for an additional detail. This detail that we're gonna be adding, it's also gonna be cylindrical. So let's add a new cylinder, rotate it on the side, and then move it in. We're gonna be placing this underneath the new parts that we added. It also needs to be realistic, so let's make it smaller. Oftentimes, it looks odd when a big part is coming out of a small part. Now that we're happy with the shape, let's start working on the details, starting off with a bevel along with its supporting edges. We're going to leverage the fact that we have many lines here to use movements, insets, extrusions in order to shape the details in this area. And we do this by selecting the center and expanding the selection, then extrude it in a little and extrude it more. Then you contract your selection, extrude it a little and then more. Contract it, then extrude it out, and then again. No, undo that. Extrude it a little first and then extrude it more. Contract your selection, move it out, now pass it to the chamfer, select the edge, and make sure you have enough segments for it to be rounded off. And once it's round, kick it to the field goal. Goal! Now we can double check if it's valid using the turbo smooth. It looks valid. we are winning. Moving over to the next competition, we're going to be adding a few splines. These are going to be used to create wires. So let's round off the corners and move them into position. We need more wires, so I'm gonna grab the one that we have and duplicate it to the right. And now we can draw a new one. This one is gonna go all the way across. I'm trying to draw the points to create something that looks natural. We can always go back and edit the points individually. In this case, I want to make them smooth. So I got rid of the handles and changed the point type. I want to attach all of these lines so we can work with them together. When we render these lines in geometry, they need to have different height elevations. Otherwise, they're going to overlap. So let's move some of them up and others down. Keeping in mind where these wires are coming from, they're coming from the bottom of all these parts. So none of the edges need to be exposed. Everything needs to be tucked in. Cable management is a skill that translates into 3D. Looking at the geometry, I'm seeing that there's something going on that is wrong. So I'm gonna isolate the wires and delete the extra vertices. We can always move this down to make sure everything is tucked. It's looking good so far. Now I'm gonna start going over the pieces and apply materials. I want all the metal components to be united. The wires can have an accent color or something else that stands out. Now I'm gonna work on the tiling. In order to do that, I'm gonna grab parts that are gonna be on the right side of our trim. I wanna attach all these pieces together so they're easier to manage. So let's duplicate a couple of these parts and move them towards the left. Remember, to make things tileable, we need to continue the pattern that ended on the left on the right. Using the slice plane, we can rotate it and then snap it to the leftmost edge of the trim. What we need to do is slice the part that is overlapping from one side to the other. With the part now sliced, grab everything that's on the left side of the trim and then snap it to the right edge of the trim. And this should perfectly tile. I'm deleting the parts that I don't need, and then I'm grabbing the wire, extending it, and plugging it in to the new parts. That way everything is connected. Now you're gonna see the main reason why this is at a lower elevation. So when we duplicate it towards the right, it continues the tiling on the edge, but then it goes underneath the main part of the model. I'm doing a visual check just to make sure that everything tiles properly. It looks like it is. Now we need to work on the part that is underneath everything. And for that, we're going to be working with the rectangle that's on the bottom. Let's add additional edges to create some extrusions. Right now, I'm trying to determine the distance of the lowest part of the model with the highest part. And this has a very big impact on the texture. It impacts the AO and the height map. And the AO impacts everything else. Some examples are the dirt and the edge wear. So I don't want the distances to be too drastic nor too shallow. Now let's add additional cuts to the bottom of this part so we can move the center upward, making the distances shallow. I'm trying to determine where the height of this new piece is going to be. I don't want it to cause too much weight with the components of the model, but I can already see that I'll need to adjust the wires and perhaps that little cylinder that is extruded in the center. What I'm going to do to make it a little bit easier is to grab some of the polygons in the center and extrude them down. This way, we make a little more space in the specific area underneath the main components that are lower. While looking at the part from a distance, I'm trying to adjust how broad do I want this extrusion to be, and we can move these vertices to the left or the right to determine that. There's still some clipping that is happening, so we need to tuck the wires in correctly. Sometimes it's hard to see the points when you're rendering the wires with geometry. The points go inside of the geometry. I'm seeing that the wire sides are set to 100. You don't need to do that. Right now the wires are the densest thing in the scene. We need to add more loops and cuts to create that definition so the model stays intact after the turbo smooth. As you can see with the preview, everything was curving in like clay. Adding some vertical slices that go all the way through, we can define that angle that goes up and make sure it stays intact. And now we can add some slices that cut through vertically from the bottom to the top. And with this, it looks like we are finished with the base model. Now let's unhide everything so we can compare and contrast how our new trim fits in with everything we've modeled so far. It looks like it's really tall. No worries, we can fix it. That reference plane is the lowest part of the trim, so I'm gonna start off by moving it close to that plane. And then I'm gonna detach that cylinder in the center, as I don't want to squish it down. And now with everything else selected, I can use the scale tool and squish it down on the Z axis while ignoring the wires in the cylinder. I'm comparing the unscaled version of this trim with the adjacent panel. This way I can tell how much scaling do I need. Let's fix the additional clipping that is happening on these wires. We know that cable management goes hand in hand with hardware upgrades. With the wire fixing complete, now I'm looking at the cylinder that's in the center. I'm focusing on the top view to make sure that it doesn't look like it's being cropped off. In reality, it doesn't matter if it goes inside of the geometry in the bottom. From the top, it will just look like there's a special compartment that is housing the bottom of this part. Now let's perform a quick test on the tiling. By grouping everything together and moving the pivot point to the left, we can make duplicates and see that the seam is not there. From the looks of it, it looks like everything is tiling perfectly. I'm also seeing that I'm not enjoying the contrast of the material, even though these materials are just temporary. I'm thinking of just making everything 100% stainless steel, for exception of the wires. As you can see, the tiling reveals certain things that you do not see while looking at the part just by itself. Right now I'm seeing if there's any proportional changes that still need to be made. So I'm experimenting with scaling these parts up a little. But nah, I'm just gonna undo that and go back to the original version. I think that was working much better. As the final detail, we're gonna grab that pill, apply the metallic material, and then put it on top of that nice detail that we have in the center of this new trim. Maintaining some consistency on these small details can help tie everything together. And with this, we're finished with the most detailed part of our trim. Congratulations! Now it's time to create the small, simple panel. We're gonna start off by copying the top detail of the large, simple panel. And then we're gonna delete everything we do not need. In this case, we can delete everything that is below the accent color. I want to move this trim detail down so it's closer to the bottom latch. So using the X-ray mode, Alt-X, I'm going to select the vertices that I need and then move it down. And then we can apply one material to everything. In this case, I'm going to apply the one that represents the metal color. Scale this detail on the X and Y axis while taking the panel size into consideration. I want to make this latch wider. One way that we can do this is to chamfer the edge in the center, and then we'll have enough geometry to be able to pull the model apart. So now that we have an extra edge, we can go to the vertex mode, select one of the sides, and then pull it. And now we have a unique latch. I'm thinking of replicating this detail so this latch that is coming down can repeat twice on the model, and then that small trim that is on the side can go all the way to the edge. So let's apply a symmetry to replicate the detail. You might need to reduce the threshold of the weld. This way, we make sure that the vertices are not collapsing. Once you're happy with the location of these latches, you can grab the vertices on the edges and line them up with the grid. Also make sure that it snaps on the vertical edge. Let's create a new rectangle to start creating the panel below. Once it's in place, I'm thinking of keeping this trim very simple. This way, when we are unwrapping 3D models, we have variety. As we have done before, let's select the edges and perform these chamfers. And I'm using a value of 0.25. And then we can add the bevel. You can see that the values that we've been using so far are causing the vertices to collapse. So I lowered the inset amount from negative 0.25 to negative 0.2. There's still some overlapping that's happening, but what we can do is just fix one of the corners and then use a two-way symmetry. Now we can apply the symmetry. Flip the X and enable the Y. And just like before, let's select the top edge and apply a small chamfer. And let's do the same for the edges that are below it. Looking at the panel from above, I'm thinking that those two latches are too large. So what I'm gonna do is apply an FFD times 3 to this selection. Now we have 9 points that we can use to edit it. I'm selecting the row at the bottom and moving it up, and then selecting both of the rows, the middle and the bottom, and scaling them down on the y-axis. And now it looks like the size of our details match the overall size of the panel. Let's select our central part of the bottom trim, and then we can delete the areas that we do not want. In this case, I just want to keep that center detail. We don't need the faces that are extruding down, but we also don't want to have a gap on the side of the model. So what I'm gonna do is take the edges that are on the top and then extrude them down while snapping to the edges below it. And then at the end, go to the vertex mode and make sure that everything is welded. We don't need the faces on the bottom. And now we can scale it down and place it where we need it. I just realized that I was calling the other part a latch, but this is also a latch. Feel free to make a few copies and then experiment with the sizes and the placements. Thinking that having 4 looks like it repeats too much, so I'm gonna delete the ones on the center and just keep the ones on the edges. Moving forward to the next detail, I'm gonna grab that famous pill and then rotate it and scale it down. I'm thinking it could be in the center of the 2 larger latches, next to the mini latches. Now we're gonna take one of the pills and put it on the corner. This pill has the same material as the panel below. Ignore the detail on the right. It was an experiment. Taking 2 of the circles, we're just gonna place them on top of the panel. And with this, we're finished with the modeling of this panel. Congratulations! Let's create the simple flat area that you see here. Now we're moving forward to the last area of our trim. Let's start off by duplicating the flat area of our previous panel. As you can see here, we rarely start a panel now without copying other details from other panels. Now we can snap the vertices to the top edge. We want this area to be very thin. It's gonna be a tileable metal detail. We can select the edges in the center and delete them. Now let's use the grid to make sure it snaps on the edge. What we're going to do is duplicate this little part to fill up the gap. Now we can snap the top vertices to the detail that we already have, and the bottom vertices to the grid. I'm thinking of making the trim on the top metallic and the one on the bottom the light painted metal. Now we can duplicate one of the circle details, bring it down to the metal area, and then we can array it across. To make it easier, I'm just gonna add a horizontal cut. I'm using the top view to make sure that the size looks correct. And then we can duplicate it all the way across. This time I almost got the exact number. I'm going to delete the extras and make sure that everything is centered on the model. In this case, I don't want the bevels on the side to show up on the trim, so it's gonna be perfectly flat on the sides. The way we can do this is to overextend the trim and then use the quick slice to remove anything that's on the side of the grid, both left and right. When we tile these trims on the model, they're not gonna have any vertical cuts. They're just gonna tile horizontally non-stop. Now I'm just making sure that the circles are centered on the trim. And the last thing that we need to do is remove the side bevels from the lower trim as well. And with this, we're finished with all of the modeling. Congratulations on finishing all of the modeling. On the next video, we're going to take our models into Substance Designer and create a trim texture set. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you on the next video.